Hi, this is Brandon from Talk Tech coming at you with another video. Today we're going to be continuing our QEMU KVM series. I'm going to be covering XML configuration files briefly, CPU and memory management, as well as attaching and detaching storage volumes from a virtual machine. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the XML configuration file is the actual physical file that holds the configuration of a virtual machine. Now, this is going to be the text representation of the physical configuration. You can view the XML file for a machine in your terminal using the versh dump XML and then the domain name. So that's pretty simple command, versh dump XML, and then we're going to do ours is test. All right, and there we go. Tons of stuff in here. It gives you information about your CPU, memory, name, UUID, tons of different configuration stuff. I'm not going to go through that in this video just because it would take up too much time, but when you have some free time, go ahead and check out the configuration file of a VM just to get yourself better acquainted. So the next thing that I want to tell you is that the actual physical location where these are stored is in the etc libvirt QEMU directory, which is the current directory that I am in. Let's just do a quick ls command. And we can see here we've got peppermint test and we've got peppermint as well. Those are the two virtual machines that I currently have set up on this machine that I'm working on. You can also edit configuration files to change many aspects of the machine. That's a pretty simple command as well. It's going to be versh and then it's going to be edit. It'll be just peppermint. All right, and there you go. The first time that you use this command, I've already set it up on this machine, but the first time it'll ask you to choose your text editor. Usually you have Nano and TinyVim are usually the two that are installed by default if you haven't installed any other text editors. I usually just use Vim, and that's what I'm using here. So we can see tons of options. Now let's go ahead and get out of Vim, and just to share a quick tip with you for exiting Vim, since that is the meme, is you can easily exit Vim without saving any changes by using :Q exclamation point. And that's going to go ahead and get you out of a Vim file. Now, the next thing that I want to go ahead and cover is CPUs. Now, we're going to go over two different aspects of setting CPUs. We're going to set the maximum as well as the number of CPUs that a machine is using. Now, why would you want to set the maximum? Because you want to make sure that you're conserving your resources, using them in the most effective manner. If you don't set a maximum, there's a good chance that somebody's going to come in and just go to town on the number of CPUs and not leave any available for any expansion of existing machines or expansion into new machines. So let's go ahead and set the maximum. It's going to be with versh set v CPUs, and then you're going to do tac domain. We're going to do peppermint tac test. All right, and then we're going to do tac maximum, and then we're going to set ours to 2, and then we're going to do tac config. And you always want to make sure at the end of these to go ahead and put tac config just to make sure that everything takes place with the next reboot of the system. And you'll want to make sure that you'll want to make sure that you shut your VMs down when doing these just to make sure that there's no issues with the VM. Let's go ahead and run that. We didn't get any errors in the output, so we know that everything was set correctly. Now let's go ahead and set the actual number of CPUs. Pretty similar to command, versh set v CPUs, the oops, too many tacs, domain, peppermint test, and then we're going to go ahead and do tac count, and we're going to do 2, then we're going to do tac config. Perfect. We didn't get any errors, so we know that everything's good here. Let's go ahead and check out let's do versh dump XML, and we're going to do peppermint tac test, and then we're going to do head tac 11. So the head command is just shows you the top lines of a file. By default, it'll show you 10. We're doing if you just do tac and then a number, that'll set the number of lines that you want to see from the top. We're setting it to 11 for this particular example. And we can see right here, we've got the vCPU set at 2. So one thing I also want to tell you is that it doesn't tell you the maximum number that you can set inside this file, but if you go and actually run the command and try to set more than 2, you're going to get an error. So just be mindful of that. Let's go ahead and move on to memory. Memory is pretty similar. Same concept with maximum as well as the configured memory. Command for setting the maximum is going to be versh set max mem. and then it's going to be the domain. We're going to do peppermint test, and then we're going to do the amount of memory that we want to set, and we're going to set it to 4096 M. Now, by default, if you don't set any kind of um, value, as far as I'm sorry, not value, but measurement, it's going to do it in kilobytes by default. So I like to do it in terms of megabytes just because I've gotten really comfortable with doing that with other VM software. So I'm going to keep doing it that way. You can also use G for gigabytes. If you want to do that way, you could just literally do 2G and that will give you 2 gigabytes. But in this case, we're doing 4096 megabytes, which is going to equal 4 gigabytes. So then we'll do a tac config, and we didn't get an error, so we know that everything is Gucci there. Now let's go ahead and set the memory, which is going to be verse set mem, and we're going to go ahead and just do peppermint test. All right, and then we're going to do a 4096 M, and then we're going to go ahead and do a tac config. All right, perfect. We didn't get any errors, so let's go ahead and do a dump XML of it again. In this one, we can actually see here, we've got memory units here. And then we've got current memory. The current memory units will be our maximum, and the current memory will be our current memory that we're using for that virtual machine. So another command that you can kind of use just to check what your actual virtual machines are, like how many CPUs and how much memory they have, is just do virsh dom info and then the name of the virtual machine. And see, here we go. We can see that we have number of CPUs, we have the maximum memory as well as the used memory available here. So one thing I want to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and start the virtual machine up before we go ahead and start getting into attaching and detaching storage volumes. So let's go ahead and get that started. All right, and we're going to have to give it just a minute here to go ahead and actually finish booting up, because we're going to go ahead and use the Burst console to go ahead and interact with this VM. Let me see if it's updated yet. So let's go ahead and there we go. Oops, make the password wrong. Let's just do that. Perfect. And if you're not familiar with the Verge console command, go back to the video for interacting with virtual machines, and that will go ahead and cover it in that video, I believe. And make sure that you're subscribing for more videos about virtual machines. It's going to be covering quite a bit more topics in the virtual machine world, and as well as let me know if there's any other topics outside of what I haven't covered yet and what I will cover in the future, if there's anything else that you would like to see. So the reason that we want to go ahead and get into this console is I want to introduce you to a command called fdisk. Fdisk is a command line partitioning tool. So the command that we're going to be using today is we're going to need to use sudo. Anytime you're interacting with fdisk, you're going to have to do either root or sudo. And we're going to do fdisk-l, and what the L option does, it's going to list the disks that are available on your system, including partitions and stuff like that. But we're going to go ahead and parse through that output with grep. And what we're going to be looking for is we're going to be looking for disk, not capital, but disk. And then we're going to go ahead and put next to disk is we're going to go ahead and put dev vd, and then we're going to do square brackets, and we're going to do inside here is we're going to do A through Z, and then we're going to go ahead and get out of here, and we're going to close that up. Now, essentially what this grep input is doing is it's going to be looking for a line that starts with disk, space, and then dev, VD, and then it's going to be VD followed by anything between A and Z. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to have to put in our password here. All right, perfect. Now we can see here in this output that we have disk dev VDA. Now this is going to be the actual logical name for our disk. This is going to be the one in this particular VM. This is the root disk where the root file system is at, and you're always going to see that. Any device that you plug into a Linux system is going to have a folder inside of the dev file, so that so if you want to know where the actual physical file location of a device is it's going to be in your dev directory. And they always use a logical naming scheme, and it's going to depend on the device. But by default, on a virtual machine, it's going to be VD, and that's just going to be for virtual disk. And then the identifier for each individual disk is going to be the last uh, place is it's going to be. And you could really do, if you wanted to name it anything else, you could do VD1 or VD10 or something like that. But the primary naming convention is to use the letters. So we can see that our root disk is going to be on VDA. So the next logical one to use would be VDB. So that's what we're going to do here for our example. Now I've actually already got a disk created for this one, so I'm not going to show you how to create the disk, but I can tell you what the command is. It's QEMU create tac F, and then you would choose between either QCOW2 or raw. Name of the disk, name of the new disk, and then the size in either megabytes, gigabytes that you want to set up. And that's how you'll actually create a new disk. But let's go ahead and just really quickly shut this one down. And you can always shut down your machine. And depending on the distribution is, you may have to add a sudo in front of this, but you're just going to use the power off command. And that's going to go ahead and power off that machine. We need to go ahead. The reason we're powering it off is because we want to go ahead and attach the disk. And I can actually show you that disk. Var libbert. Oops. Images. And this is the one that we're going to be using here. So I'm actually going to copy this output here, just so I don't have to type it again. All right, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attach the actual disk to our peppermint test machine. We're going to do versh attach, then we're going to do disk, and then we're going to do tac domain. We're going to do peppermint test. We're going to do tac source, and this is where that source location is going to be at. So make sure you designate that, because it's not going to automatically pick it up in the correct path. All right, and then you're going to do tac persistent, and then tac target, and then for this one we're going to use VDB. All right, so let's go ahead and do that, and it says disk attached successfully. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here, and we're going to do the versh console again. Whoops, let's go up here, let's start it again. We're going to have to give it just a second to go ahead and get itself booted up. All right, so that should be ready to go. All right, and let's do perfect. Now let's go ahead and use lsblk. And what this command does, it's going to list the block devices that are attached, which is going to include your storage volumes. And we can see that one right there. Perfect. It's actually already on the machine. So let's go ahead and just issue the sudo power off again. All right, perfect. All right, now let's go ahead and detach that disk. All right, tac domain. Test, and then we're going to do tac persistent. We'll do tac target, and we'll do the block again, VDB. Perfect, and it has been detached successfully. All right, so that's pretty much all I've got for this video. So make sure you give it a thumbs up if you like the video. Let me know what I'm doing right. Let me know what else you want to see. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it. And let me know what you didn't like about the video. And make sure to subscribe for more Linux and virtual machine content coming at you in the future. I really want to thank you very much for taking the time out to watch my video, and have the greatest of days.